every person comes with a kind of history of, like not feeling perhaps even safe in relationships. And that's the norm. We should be able to normalize that everyone has like a family story of such.
Hima, welcome back to Million Opinions.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be back again.
So today I want to know more about self-respect and self-love.
I think I want to answer that question in two main ways. One is the parenting project, one which we take all very seriously and sometimes too seriously. It's like, I have to teach my child this, I have to teach my child that. Of course, it comes with a sense of responsibility that you wanted to do what's best for your child. But are you having the time, the opportunity? Are you allowing yourself that chance for connection? So we'll have to address that teaching aspect of it, how much pressure you put on yourself, one, because I do hear this from a lot of many parents. In fact, most parents, they do want kids to excel, and which is a reasonable expectation from themselves as parents. But are we forgetting some smaller nuances? Like, is that pressure affecting us, discouraging the connection that we have with children? Is there any negotiation with discipline? Has that ever been considered? So these bits are something that we can talk a bit more about. But when you talk about self-love and self-respect, there is a bit of a difference, but there is more similarities than not. Because when you stand up for yourself, when you respect the boundaries that you've put for yourself, you are choosing what brings you joy and happiness, what brings you prioritizing yourself, your present and your future. Now, this doesn't come at the cost of someone else, at the cost of someone else's happiness or their rights. It's being able to balance between these realities. What does this decision give you? What does it take away from somebody else? And that sense of agency is what we are trying to show, perhaps how to navigate, not through talk, but through our actions.
Help me understand, how as parents can we inculcate this in children?
So there are a few strategies, but I think before acting on them, the first thing is to be able to understand and imbibe the idea of what is the premise that you're practicing these things on. Again, slowing down the process. It's not about getting things 100% right. Like, for example, if your child gets something wrong, is there room for communication? We are talking about how to get onto the page of exercising some of those strategies. When you're talking about self-love, it's like, what are some things that you can do so that they can decide for themselves? But before that, as a parent, you should understand what's the point, what premise are you working on?
Right. Okay.
Right. Okay. So, like, for example, if I teach my child, okay, this is right, this is wrong, I'm kind of prescribing things to them.
Okay.
Right. The exercise, the teaching moment comes when you give them an opportunity where they are the ones going back and forth, and you are with them in that process. Like, for example, let's talk about a teenager who has a few deadlines, hasn't been scoring too well, and knows and is keen on wanting to pick her grades up or move forward. But there is a friend in the picture who has a different set of expectations. And now, if this said teenager has an open communication with the parent, they will be able to, if not at least share, but at least decide for themselves, what are the costs? Am I compromising things that I want? Or am I giving away the pocket money that my parents have given me more than I want because of some kind of peer pressure? Is it worth that? So this dialogue, unfortunately, not many teenagers or kids who are 6, 7, 10 can handle that. Giving them an opportunity, also agency, giving them the control to understand what is practice, what their boundaries are, where are they going to say no, where are they going to be assertive, how are they going to be assertive. Being able to prioritize something that you want. And even when it comes to, similar to what we spoke about last time, the different roles that we play, do you count yourself in there somewhere? So that doesn't start at the age of 30, it starts much earlier.
So when you say much earlier, how earlier?
Honestly, I would even go up to 1 and 2 right from the start. And of course, it doesn't mean you allow a 4-year-old to make life choices.
Of course, no, age and stage. So depending on that.
Yeah. So what that would look like is personal boundary. When, okay, this is a fine example. When a child says that I don't want to eat a certain type of food, how can you negotiate that? Are there alternatives? If I don't like spinach, okay, what is an alternative vegetable that is agreeable? I'm done eating. Will you incorporate the child's wish into your parenting style? When the daughter says that I don't want to wear this sock, it's about, it starts there, and that's where you start allowing the child to believe that she has an agency. She then believes that she has confidence to employ that agency. And when we keep talking about social expectations and environment, and it actually all starts with parents. Because if you take a person, the immediate extension is family and friends. Then follows community, extended family. So if we kind of set the bar of how the world behaves, for a child to see that, it's pretty massive. I hope that makes sense. Actions, what we do, speaks louder than what we tell them. So when we teach, it's quite important for them to see us, treat ourselves with some self-love.
It does start from home. But again, over here we have a mixture or a variety of cultures. And then when you go from here, you go back to your home country. And in this case, in my case, it's India. There again, there's a different culture. And there to say or to stand your ground with anyone older to you is considered disrespectful. Now, we as adults know how to navigate through those things. But for a child, for them, they go through a much more difficult time. So how do we work with this in a collective culture?
Kids, as much as we, you may say that, going back to a home country, we are exposed to a different generation who hold us accountable for a different cultural norm. The primary caregiver is the world to the child. The extended family, I'm not sure how much children will even absorb or understand those cultural norms. If parents give the kind of approval, then that goes way more than how much they will even comprehend what social society would prescribe or expect of the children.
That also brings me up to a follow-up question. If the connection is not there, and if there is a struggle between communicating, let's say, to the child, maybe verbal, non-verbal, how exactly can one work towards improving that?
Imperfection in family ties always exist. Even if every person comes with a kind of history of, like not feeling perhaps even safe in relationships, and that's the norm. We should be able to normalize that everyone has like a family story of such. If I've understood your question of self-love and self-respect, I think being able to have the dialogue, because many people, what happens is they go down a slope and they've invested too much, is when they realize that I've forgotten who I am. Actually, that's something that I hear a lot. That slip needs to slow down a little bit. Can you teach an adult to ask some of those questions way ahead? Can you ask a teenager that? That's where I am thinking right now.
So you said that we should normalize things that in every family there's going to be some
absolutely.
imbalances.
Yes.
Why do we expect a perfect family?
Because that's safe.
I mean, but then are you not going to accept the person for their faults as well? Because everybody comes with faults.
Again, that's a part of the life lesson. We expect something perfect because we believe that safety is out there. It doesn't mean like physically safer. It's emotionally safer. I'm going to feel less threatened. I'm going to get married. I'm going to be better. I'm going to have a kid. I'm going to be better. I'm going to get a stable job. But as you go through those life milestones is life, lived experience. And accepting that imperfection is not a very easy thing. I think people in their 40s and 50s is when they realize that, okay, but they realize that this is life. And I think I've lived through a good 40 years. I can manage the next 40 years as well. So it might be a bit of a downer to actually say that to, say, a 26-year-old, because of course they are full of optimism and lots of confidence, and it's again like how you want that fairy tale, but life is a lot more fuller, and I honestly don't know how to find the words to sell this to you, that life is a lot more fuller when you accept and love the flaws as well.
For a person who has not worked on self-love and self-respect, tips for them?
One of the first things that comes to mind when you say a practice, a person does not exercise self-love, is somebody who isn't very kind to themselves. So being patient with yourself with regards to the mistakes you make, and mainly how you speak to yourself. Because some people say really, really terrible things to themselves. Those words are too harsh. And in sessions, sometimes I say that you will never use that or say these words to somebody else. How is it that you can you have that level of harshness directed at yourself? So yes, the unkindness needs to slow down.
You say that. Why would you say these kind of things to yourself? And they say it's because that's how I've been told over and over again when I was growing up with my peers, my teachers, my family, and that's very hard to change. So do we just blame them, or how exactly do we move ahead?
I'm not sure how I would use the word blame. But yes, if a person has picked up certain habits from somewhere else, you do hold that role accountable. It doesn't mean that you let go of what choices and responsibility you have now, but you acknowledge that, okay, a 3-year-old or a 7-year-old kid shouldn't have been called a waste of a life. Where did that language come from? A parent or an adult or a teacher is not supposed to do that. I had another client, one of her earliest memories of her punishing herself was when a teacher who was much older pulled her out of class and said the most mean things that you can tell. And she wasn't angry at that point. She was confused. So if it was anger, that means there is a sense of agency, a sense of retort. You have capacity to retort. Confusion means like, do I deserve what I'm hearing? Maybe I do. Hence, the adults surrounding children have to be quite responsible. If an adult has spoken beyond accepted norm, I do hold them responsible. It doesn't mean, again, blame has a new meaning that, you relinquish yourself of what you can do, the control you have now. Not necessarily. You unlearn. Much as you learn, there's an unlearning pattern as well.
How do you unlearn?
Patience, new language, what language you definitely will not use towards yourself.
What about the past? How do we forget that?
You can't forget that. It's like a part of your life story. A lot of people start talking about, but you can, what you do is technically allot a place and then know that is not something you want to continue.
One of the common phrases when we were growing up is useless fellow. If anyone says that to me, I would laugh and be like,
it's a light slang
it's
sort
a
of thing.
light slang, yes. But what happens is it depends on how the other person takes it also. So if a person says, am I that useless, and believes that they're useless, that is really detrimental. So
I think you've answered that question. Honestly, that is how reality is. A lot of people either misrepresent, exaggerate, or minimize. And it doesn't even have to be English that is used colloquially or formally. It can be anything that is said. The actual part about communication is not how well you've spoken. It's about how well the other person has received. Again, this happens in everyday life, but when it happens to a child, it does have lasting effects. There isn't a situation where you can always have that guarded conversation. There are times when mums just say, get out. Like leave. Of course, it's a harsh thing, but lots of moms have said, get out of the house. Telling a child get out does have its repercussions.
So we touched on self-respect. We touched on self-love. How is that different to entitlement?
Disregarding another person's happiness or knowingly working right against it without fully analyzing the cost benefit there. Are you okay to risk that relationship? So that is when it goes a bit overboard. When you overestimate or you see that it is okay to jeopardize someone else's happiness.